Your colleague, Alex. Anyway, I'm getting an understanding of how you guys' business works. You guys don't. It doesn't matter what time, short notice. Anyway, let's let's do what we got to do. Good morning, Leah. Yeah, which is unfortunate, I think, because in particular with a topic that we're getting ready to talk about, this it's dangerous for it to be a 2, 3 minute thing for such a complex issue. So, as I mentioned to Alex, even the sort of the premise of the story is very, very what should I say? Um, Uninformed. And here's what I mean, because the topic is child poverty. It should never be child poverty. And here's why I say that, Leah. Children don't make a decision. They don't wake up and say, hey, you know what? I want to be poor today. Children are only poor because their parents are poor. The story should be about families and parents. So just even the title alone. But children are. When you talk about children, you get people's attention, and I think it diverts away from at least what I'm going to be answering are the real issues that has nothing to do with families. It has to do with the systems that we're functioning in. Anyway, let me pause that because this is something we feel very passionately about and spend a lot of time on. So, good morning. Hmm? Sure. It's Jerome Underwood, JeromeUnderwood. I'm president and CEO of Action for a Better Community. Sure. You want to just jump right into it? Sure. Action for a Better Community is a community action agency um, designated by the federal government to fight the war on poverty in Monroe and Ontario counties. We have been doing that since 1965, and we're part of a national network, the National Community Action Partnership, where we're one of 1,000 agencies across the country doing similar work than we're doing. Well, we spend a lot of time with families in a case management working environment to help enable them to be socially, emotionally, and economically self-sufficient. What they tell us over and over again is that the systems that the economic systems, the political systems, that the social systems that they function in render them at a significant disadvantage to becoming emotionally self-sufficient and as well as economically self-sufficient. So concurrently, as we work with families to increase their what should I say, their capabilities and their abilities, we also simultaneously work to change the unjust systems that they have to function in. Not at all. This is not new news to anyone of us. And when I say of us, ourselves and other agencies working on behalf of families. So there's nothing surprising about this because, uh, ironically, and unfortunately, too much of the focus, in our opinion, is on the families as opposed to the systems, as I mentioned, that they're functioning in. So we are working to change those systems and change the laws and change the practices that have, in some cases, unintended consequences. But as some people say, that the systems are working really well because where we live, again, specifically Monroe County, There is so much wealth, and at the same time, in some instances, a mile and a half, 2 miles away, there's concentrated poverty. So our focus is justice, and as Brian Stevenson's quote said, the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. So we will continually work to dismantle systems that are one, inadequate, two, unjust, three, racist, to be quite honest. Because one of the things that families tell us, families of color in particular, that one of their biggest challenges that they face is the various forms of racism that are inherent in our society. Oh, absolutely. They're mainly sort of categorized into the social determinants of health. And when we talk about the social determinants of health, then we talk about employment, education, housing, criminal justice, um, healthcare. So when we look at data, and this is key, when we look at data, all of the data as it results to people, they're disproportionate, unfortunate data points that are aligned along uh, racial lines and economic lines, because they're not only people of color are poor in Monroe County, but there are a number of and unacceptable as well number of Caucasians who are also poor, and they face those same systems that, as I mentioned, have unfortunate negative impact on people of color and people are poor, who are poor in general. Without a doubt, but it's very important to note that none of these systems function independently of the other. They all work together to, net out what we see right now, and this is concentrated poverty in the city of Rochester and poverty as well in our suburbs. So that's also important to point out that they're not just poor people in the city of Rochester. The suburbs have their unfortunate share of poor people who, again, look like everybody. So, our work, certainly primarily in the city of Rochester, where the vast majority of people are people of color, is to change laws, dismantle policies, and to change behavior, i.e., practices, not only in government but also in the private sector, education sector, pretty much every sector, and to try to change the underlying foundation under which poverty so comfortably exists. That is a very, very difficult task, obviously, because again, it's not the first time that we have this dubious distinction of being so high on a list like that. Certainly, we're not pleased with that, but we're also not tired of working on it, because giving up is not an option for us, because families have a lot at stake. And again, I say families, not just children, because children don't make a decision in their economic status. We need to change the environment for their parents, and we need to make things equitably accessible for everyone. Because if the children's parents had livable, upwardly mobile wages, the children would not be poor. So we want to shift the focus to families as opposed to just isolating a simple data point of child poverty. Yep. Indeed. Mhm. Sure. um, we're in an environment right now, on the latter side of the pandemic, and going towards, it's referring to COVID, and we know that um, there are a significant amount of job openings, not only in our agency, but in probably every industry. So, our task is to prepare uh, uh, parents and individuals to access those jobs. However, we also know that even with adequate qualifications, sometimes people face discriminatory practices in hiring and employment. So again, back to removing the focus off of the parents and putting it on the systems that they work on. Just about every um, economic category you look at has these same disparities in terms of the levels of employment for people of color. So we want to make sure that businesses, whether they be government, healthcare systems, judicial systems, they also need to change their practices to make sure that employment is fair and equitable. We've made some gains there, but certainly when you look at the data again in terms of employment and compensation levels, there are disparities, and those disparities exist along racial lines. We need to change those things. Indeed, we are extremely optimistic that the mayor and his team, and not only the mayor, but also the county executive's office, and we're proud to see them working much closer together than we are aware it has been in the past. So we talk to them on a regular basis. Uh, they seem to be uh, in tune to what we're saying. So, but however, the proof of the pudding, as we say, is in the things that change. But again, we're very optimistic. They have called on us and others, not just Action for a Better Community, but others, to seek our input and guidance with respect to the sort of things that need to change in government. But also, remember, there's also a private sector that has a whole lot of our economic outcome in their power, and we're looking for them also, the private sector, to make changes that are, again, as I mentioned, more equitable and fair for everyone. We do a significant amount of work with the Rochester City School District. We consider ourselves partners with the district in terms of, as we say, taking action to make a better community. We are a supplier of early childhood education to the city with respect to UPK and EPK education. We work alongside our colleagues at the school district with respect to trying to increase the level and quality of parent engagement in terms of education. So yes, we do a lot of partnerships with the city school district, with the city, with the county of Monroe, and with our other colleagues who are in the non-for-profit field, all working jointly together to try to make Rochester a better place to live. Yeah, just hopefully, when this airs, shifting the narrative, if you will, away from child poverty, to family is very important, and also shifting the narrative towards systems as opposed to people's personal responsibility is also something that we want to make sure. Families get beat up. You should do this, you should do that. Well, we have significant amount of evidence that people do those things and there's still rejection that they face, and the data tells us that. So the responsibility or burden, if you will, needs to be placed on the systems that allow poverty to thrive. And we need to change those systems because, as I mentioned, it has very, very harsh impacts on many, many families. Again, some intentional and some the cynics would say the system is working well. So we need to change those systems to make them more fair and equitable for everyone. Well, go ahead. Again, you talk to them from a position of fairness. Children understand what's fair, and why is there concentrated? Why is violence concentrated to the city of Rochester? Part of it is a resource issue. I'll point you to an article that you can read on your leisure called "Serial Forced Displacement." Serial forced displacement, and it was done, I think, mid or early 90s. To again, it's a system approach to um, why to behavior actually, because we don't see this concentrated violence in our suburbs as you pointed out, because they're adequately resourced. And even if there was violence, the kind of response in terms of resources that happens when anything happens in our suburbs is very different than what we see in urban areas across this country, not just Rochester. So again, the system approach, of course, everyone has personal responsibility for his or her behavior, but that ought not to be the single and solitary thing in terms of, well, look at what they're doing. No, this is a response to, and it's not new. Um, we are not happy about the fact that there's significant violence happening in the city, but we also know that everyone has a role to play in terms of, um, the ingredients that could be used as solutions to turn that around. And we believe that everyone has a responsibility in trying to make that better. All right. Thank you, Leah. Enjoy the rest of your day.